All right, let's get in here today on Eyes Up Here. It's an Eyes Up Here YouTube extra. It's Eyes Up Here on the Creative Control Network in audio form. It's Eyes Up Here everywhere, but Eyes Up Here directly between me, the Chadster, of course, and you, the Queen of Extreme, Francine, as we settle in to discuss a topic that we've been building up for the last 2 or 3 weeks. Darkside of the Ring, Season 4, talking about somebody you know very, very well, somebody near and dear to your heart. I'm dying to get your thoughts on the episode. The one and only Chris Candido. But before we get involved, how are you doing this morning?
I've been better. I have been crying most of the morning. I was hoping to go into this episode feeling like, oh, it's a celebration of his life and all this stuff, like a positive thing, which I thought they showed him in a very good light, but it was hard to relive a lot of those moments because for a lot of them I was there, and I saw a lot of things happen to him and to her, so it was difficult for me to sit through that, without feeling some kind of emotion. And it just makes me so upset because he, again, and it'll lead to this in the discussion, but he was so young and so full of life. And what was so heartbreaking was not only his brother's take on it, but his mother.
Yes.
Because a parent should never have to, bury their child. And it was just so hard to watch for me. It was just really, really difficult to watch.
Somebody who you can say was universally loved, and we saw the emotion from everyone that they spoke with about Chris and what he left legacy-wise in the business and just the impact he had on people. And just from being around you and Shane over the last 6 years, I've felt it. And I saw him at shows from afar. I saw him at conventions from afar. But just to see the impact he made on you guys has been fascinating. And piecing it all together, you can't help but feel your emotion come through that screen.
Yeah, it was. We had a lot of good times, but I look back and I was reliving some of the things that I saw him do, that in that moment I thought he had control, and so I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but it was. And there's a lot of things I've never discussed before because I don't want to be that one person who breaks kayfabe and talks about people's drug addictions or alcohol problems, but it's out there. It's out there and it's known. And I've seen Chris do a lot of things, I've never been a drug person. I've said this before. I've taken a pill here and there. I was on Dilaudid when I broke my hip. So I know the feeling that you get from these pills, but thank the Lord above, I've never got to the point where I was addicted. The Dilaudid was the first, I think, and only time I was ever prescribed any type of medication like that. And at the time I needed it because the pain was excruciating. What these guys go through, and girls, what they go through every night, you can't imagine the feeling that your body goes through, because it is not, I don't care what anybody says, it is not normal. Even though you're trained, it is not normal to put your body through that pain and through that process of bumping each and every single night. It's not normal. It creates trauma to the body. It's damage. So I understand that a lot of these guys got addicted to the pills. The drugs, however, there was not only the somas, but there was cocaine use. I remember one time we were going to one of the shows, and I got out of the car and I knocked on Chris's door, and he had something in his hand and he was rubbing it against his gum. vigorously rubbing it. I said, "What are you doing?" I didn't know what that was, and it was a rock of cocaine. And, apparently you get high when you rub it against your gum line. Like, I didn't know any of that stuff, you know? And at the time, I was just like, "Oh, okay." I I I was young, I was naive, I didn't know what it did to you, I didn't try it, it wasn't my deal, and I just went about my way. I said, "Well, he he performs every single night solid. He Is there anything to worry about with him? I don't think so." That was my mindset, you know? Um, One night he took horse tranquilizer. He was on the roof of the building, and we thought he was gonna jump off the roof. I So many things that I look back and I'm just like, "Jesus," like, all this stuff, and then he dies, like Cornette said, it breaks his ankle, and it's a blood clot, and why the hell did he get on that plane? Why? If he didn't do it, he would have been alive, hopefully, because he was straightening his life out. It was just so terrible to watch. I and uh, There's another story I don't think I've told this publicly. This affected me, and I think it made him and I a lot closer. Um, I was at my hotel one night. uh, I feel like I'm not doing this to bury him. I'm just telling you my experience is with him and her. Um, I get a phone call from Paul Heyman, and he tells me, "You need to go over to Chris Candido's room." And I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "I think he's ODing." I was like, "What? What?" And I'm thinking, where's Shane? Where's Bam Bam? Like, why am I getting this phone call? "Please go help him." I get. So I'm like, okay. So I had to get on a shuttle because I wasn't at the same hotel for some reason, but they were close by. And I asked the shuttle, "Can you take me?" And he took me, and I went. And I walked into the room, and I found Chris on the bed in the fetal position, just rocking back and forth, covered in sweat. And I said, "What did you take?" And my heart is pounding. And with that, the phone rings, his phone rings. I pick it up, and it's Tammy. And she says, "You are the only girl that I trust to do this. Please help him. Please help him." Because she wasn't with us at the time. She wasn't there. And I said, "Okay." And she said, "Paul's going to call back." So Paul called back. I didn't know what to do. I was panicking. I was in a panic. I was crying. And Paul said, "Check every drawer, check the room, check under the bed, check under the mattress." I'm checking everything. I opened one of the drawers, and I found a bunch of needles, and I found these little vials. I didn't know what they were. And I said, "Paul, I found, like, I don't know how many. There were a bunch of them." I said, "There's these little tiny vials." And he said, "Get rid of it." And I said, "How do I get rid of it?" And he says, "Flush it down the toilet." I was like, "Okay." So the vials, like, they had that rubber that you can only put the needle in, like that little cap. You couldn't untwist it or anything. They were tiny. So I got a needle, and I started extracting the drug, which I found out was Nubane after I read
Oh,
everything. It was Nubane. And I started squirting. I'm ping, ping, ping. I'm just ping all over I'm squirting in the toilet. I'm squirting in the sink. I don't know how many vials I got rid of that evening, but I got rid of them. And I remember I sat next to Chris. I put my arms around him as he just rocked back and forth. And he was dripping in sweat, dripping in sweat. And I said to Paul, "What do I do?" And he's just like, "Just stay there until he falls asleep. And then in the morning, we'll go over and we'll get him." And I was like, "Okay." And that's what I did. I put him to bed. I waited, I waited, I waited. And then finally, I went back to my room. I talked to Tammy, and she was, "Thank you, And the next day, he was fine. He was fine. And Bam Bam came up to me, and he said, "You got rid of the stuff that was in the drawer?" And I go, "Yeah." And he put his head down, and he shook his head. And I said, what's the matter? And he goes, it was mine. And I said, I didn't know what to, I said, Paul told me to get rid of it. And he said, well, it was $400 worth of, I said, would you like my paycheck? I offered to give him my paycheck and he said, no, that's okay. And he walked away, but his head was down. And I said to myself, my God, I was told to take care of him. And God, what if he would have died?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I didn't know what to do. I'm not familiar with this type of addiction. So I panicked. I was panicking and I just did what I was supposed to do, and like Bam Bam wasn't mad, but he kind of was just like, but like he looked like he was super bummed. And I was like, I'll give you part of my paycheck to cover the cost. I said, Paul told me to get rid of it. And he's like, no, it's all right. And he knew it was for the better, because if me or someone else didn't show up that night and Chris continued to take that, like, God forbid, what would have happened?
Right.
And that's when I said to myself, something's wrong. Like, this isn't normal behavior, but it wasn't my place to step in. And I just told Chris, I said, look, we're here for you, but you scared me. And he's like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm fine. And he went and I remember that was one of the only times I think we had like, we got on this tiny, tiny plane. I don't know if it was a chartered plane just for us, but it was one of those tiny ones that you take because the next town isn't like too far over. So it was mostly us on the plane. And he sat next to me on the plane and he was joking around and he was fine. And I'm just like, how do you bounce back from something like that so quickly? And that's why I said to myself, maybe, like, is this a problem, or is this just, oh my God, maybe it just got a little too far one time. It was an accident. I don't know. But apparently there was much more, like, even watching this back now, apparently there was much more to it than I even knew existed back then. And you don't want to be a stooge. You don't want to get your friends in trouble. But when Paul calls you and tells you to do something, you're going to do it. And whether it would have been him or somebody else in that locker room, I would have did that for any one of them because they were my family.
Right.
It was very difficult just to watch, and because then all these thoughts came back in my head, and I was there for a lot of this stuff between him and her, and it was a lot.
Yeah, I wish they gave them more time, but I don't wish they gave them more time, because I wish they could have told more of the story, but only more of the story would have had more stories similar to what you're describing now. And I like where they kept the story. Again, I know it doesn't have a happy ending, but they kept it in a focus on Chris's life and Chris's passion for wrestling and his love of the business and just how the dark turn brought stuff down. But I wish they gave them more time to tell more of the story, because they've given them 2 hours for other shows or 90 minutes. I just wish they got a little more time. And that's where that was a little unfortunate, because I mean, it kind of went like he broke in. He was running shows in the backyard. Then he was in Smoky Mountain. Then one day he's in the WWF. Oh, now he's in ECW. Oh, now he's in TNA.
It was rushed.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we did get one glimpse of the triple threat throwing up the triple threat symbol. We did get one brief little glimpse if you paused it, but they completely missed when they were in WCW. Apparently, that was not a good time. That was on par with some of the worst.
You would think they would bring that up, because that's when they found the new Bane.
Right.
Allegedly, Kim Page found the new Bane in the bathroom stall.
Right.
And that's how they got fired.
I would think that would be a huge part of the story. Yeah. Whether or not, Tammy's, part of the story is saying that wasn't mine, that wasn't hers. That's what she says. But still, it's a part of the story that carries the narrative that they had these continuing problems that would follow them. I do like that they brought up the Puerto Rico stuff, because, again, that's another vital part of the story, because that's where he decided, no, we got to do the turnaround. And when he came back to the States, I remember it was like he came back like wildfire, because, again, I grew up in Jersey, and any weekend you could find Chris on a show, you could find Bam Bam on a show in those 2004, 2005 year, or 2003, 2004 years. And Chris was putting on those same shows that he was before he jumped to WWF or Smoky Mountain or wherever he went. But I just felt that was my one critique, is that they just went boom, boom, boom from each place that he went. And I think they could have, with time being what it is, they could have pinpointed some specifics in each territory.
I helped run an all-girls show in Texas the week before he died. And I booked Tammy on it. And Chris came. Chris came with her. And he wanted to work. And I said, it's an all-girls show. And he goes, I don't care. And so he put, I think it was Amy Lee. I think he put primetime Amy Lee over. Because he just wanted, and I said, Chris, there's no budget. I don't care. I just want to work. He goes, I can't sit here and not do something. And he worked. And he put her over. And that's the kind of guy Chris was. You know, the brother said it when he started. Johnny, when Chris started, he would just drive the shows, and even if he wasn't booked, he'd try to get on them.
Right.
And there was no payday. He just wanted to have fun because he loved the. I've never met a guy who loved the business as much as Chris Candido. Never in my life. Everything was wrestling. Everything was wrestling. And he wanted to make it fun and make it a good time. And I said it a million times. If you look at the triple threat, Chris was the comedy guy. Even though he could work his ass off and he could cut a promo, he was the comedy in that, you know, trio of men. And it just made it so fun. The one thing that stands out, I don't know if it was Cornette or Mick Foley who said it, but they said the biggest addiction that Chris had was Tammy.
Yes, I think that was Mick Foley.
Okay, and that got me. That got me because,
that was powerful.
You know, Tammy has had her share of suitors, whether they were broken up or not. I mean, some people would argue the fact and say they were still together. She always had said, no, we split up when I was with Sean, or, you know, but the other people that she was with, and, you know, Chris just seemed to let it roll off his back. That makes me sick to my stomach, the way he just took it. That I never understood. I understand you want to keep your spot. I get that, but that's your girl. Like, I don't, that part to me, like, blows my mind. That dynamic with those two, shit, when they were good, they were so good. And I loved them as a couple. But then you go back and you see all that kind of stuff that she did. And it's just like, God, it was hard. It was just hard to digest that part for me. The infidelity like that, I don't know. Right under his nose. I've seen it where the wives or even the husbands are home and guys are doing their own thing, but God, you're on the road together. How could you?
And the fact that those stories have been bandied about for years.
Decades.
I mean, when I got the internet in 1997, that was being talked about on the internet in 1997. Okay. And they were still Tammy was still in the WWF, and Chris was still technically under contract to the WWF, but in ECW. It's amazing how the narrative changed, though, because when Chris was alive, they were still together on paper. When Chris passed away, that's when it was revealed, oh no, we were on a break. So I don't, you know, I mean, obviously, just as an outsider, we have to go by what we hear.
Yeah.
I just can't believe how much of an outward he must have had nerves of steel to be able to hear that kind of stuff. And it wasn't just about Shawn Michaels. It was other people that were said and rumored for years.
Yeah.
And look, I'm sure Chris, good looking dude, jacked to the gills. He could have had anybody he wanted, I'm sure.
I've never heard of infidelities by Chris. I've never heard it.
That's what I'm saying.
Not one time. He was so in love with her. And I remember the guys used to be like, why? Why? There's so many pretty girls out there. And that was part of, like, you know, before she came over to ECW, I said this in other interviews, like, I was warned about Tammy. You're not going to like her. You're not going to get along. And I'm like, why not? Oh, she's very difficult to deal with. Her ego's through the roof. She's this, she's that. And I never had a problem with Tammy. Never. I don't even think we've ever really had an argument. And I've known her. When did she come to ECW? I don't even remember what year she came.
So I believe she technically gets there 98.
Okay. So I've known her since 1998. And everybody said, watch out. Watch out. She's going to try to steal your spot. She's going to try to do this. She's going to try to bury you. Never did she. So in that, I've never said a bad word about Tammy business wise. And she's been my friend for years. And everything that I've said to her face. I've said it to her face.
Yes. And you guys have said that on camera to each other. There's a shoot interview where you guys talked about stuff you've said to one another. You've talked about it in person. I want to just clarify one thing. Tammy did make appearances in 97 because she was there right next to Paul Heyman helping time.
Right. Yeah, she was. Yeah, so that's when I met her. Okay, so 1997. Okay, yeah.
But she was not full time with ECW until 98. So I just want to clarify that. Just remembering as the timeline goes through my head.
Well, whenever she came, we clicked from the beginning. And I said it before. Her, Chris, me, and Shane would go in like days early or stay a couple days after and make, like, if we went to Fort Lauderdale or if we went somewhere sunny with a beach or something, we would like take it as an opportunity to vacation, and just hang out and have a good time. And I never, ever, ever gotten any kind of arguments with her personally or professionally. She was a pleasure to work with. And I will say that and stand by that. I loved working with Tammy. Yeah, loved it. So everybody who told me she was a nightmare, I was just like, wow, you hear, like, I always hear things about people, but I'm the kind of person, like, I'll be on my toes, but I'm going to judge you for how you treat me. And she never treated me poorly. And, to this day, I love Tammy, but I hate the person that she's become. So before anybody comes at me for saying, oh, she's a murderer, she's this, I know what she did, and I hate that about her. I hate it. And the way things are looking, I will probably never speak to her again, and that breaks my heart. And it hurts me to see a girl who had the world by the balls and had everything in the palm of her hand, everything that she could want, she had. A loyal boyfriend, a job where she was on TV and she was the focus of attention. She had the talent, she had the charisma, she had the beauty. She had everything, and she made it all disappear because of friggin' poor choices. You correct mistakes. You can't keep making the same mistake over and over again and expect it to, be okay. How many times did she do this to herself? I can't give her a pass for that just because she's my friend and I love her. I judge her by that now, and it infuriates me. It makes me so mad because I know the person she was before all this stuff happened. And I'm telling you right now, as soon as Chris passed away, downward spiral. I've seen such a change. And people, like Dr. Tom, he wasn't fond of her, when he was working with her. And I get that, but I didn't see that side of Tammy. What I saw was a good person until Chris died. And as she was still good to me, but her lifestyle changed. Her, the men she was saying, like, some of them were okay, but then there were a lot of them who were just straight up losers. And she started drinking heavily more. And it got to the point where I told her to her face, you have a problem. You need to get help. Nope, I'm fine. I can control it. I don't have a problem. And when I watched it and they played the voice recording of her and she was laughing, 7 DUIs, and she's laughing. I don't care if that's a nervous laugh or not. That is infuriating. I have kids. I'm on the road with my kids taking them somewhere and some asshole drunk driver hits me, God forbid. No, that's not okay. One time you do it, I mean, it's not okay once, but she did it 7, 8 times. Come on. Come on.
Yeah.
I can't give her a pass for that because she's my friend. I love her, but I hate her at the same time. I hate the person she's become. And I'll tell her that to her face too. If she ever sees this, I will tell her that to her face.
Well, when she came on with us, I mean, she's telling us about how she had the best jobs and they loved her because
She was
of who
making
she
light
was.
of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, she essentially never learned from the mistakes that she made. And then after she was on with us, I think we had the last interview that she had. She might have done one other one.
I know we had the first one.
We had the first one, but then I think we had the last technically before everything happened with the incident with the driver that she hit, and she essentially learned nothing from that interview that we were conducting. I mean, it was jokey, and it was this, and it was that, and it was amazing. But your vigor has evolved. I mean, it's built over the years. I just by knowing you, I've seen, you say the same thing, but I've seen it because, like you said, that could be you or I in that car that was struck.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting. She had the money because of this OnlyFans thing that she was
dominated.
She was making money hand over foot. She would text me because I was still talking to her this whole time. We were still friends. I was still talking to her. We had just done WrestleCade together, and it was the first time that we ever roomed together, believe it or not, because she always roomed with Chris. Right. She was always on the road. She always roomed with Chris. This was the first time her and I shared a hotel room. We had the best weekend. Not a drop of alcohol. I told her I'm not going to drink in respect to you because I don't want to entice anybody that can't control their liquor. So I don't have to drink when I'm on the road. We ordered food, we watched TV, we laughed. She was showing me her OnlyFans page. She was showing me the guys that were on there. She was making so much freaking money. You mean to tell me if you have to go somewhere, you can't call an Uber to take you? You have to get in the friggin' car drunk? No. I'm sorry. That is inexcusable, and it's disgusting, and it makes my stomach turn. And I would tell her that.
If you don't mind, let me ask you a question on the timeline. What do you remember about Chris and Tammy's suspension from ECW?
I don't really remember them not being around for that long. I know the part where they talked about the credit cards. Like Chris always would tell me, oh my God, we bought this. We put the flights on our card, and now he's not giving me any money. Like I remember living through that with them because we were all going through kind of similar situations. I don't know how much money he was owed. It was a lot.
It was a lot. It was a lot. Tammy gave the numbers on one of her shoot interviews, and if that is the true number, and then the mom
was it like over 100,000?
Oh no, it was more. It was
more.
It was incredible because they ended up losing their house, their dream house that they had. Around the area where I lived in Jersey, and the mom confirmed that they lost the house because of the credit card debt.
Right. I do remember all of that. I remember being really angry when Tammy did the TNN piece.
Yes, you've said that on the air before.
I feel like Paul exploited her, and that it shouldn't have happened. And I know it was for ratings, but I feel like he took advantage of her. I don't know what the leverage was with that. Like, we'll get your job. Was it you'll get your job back if you do this for us, so to speak, or something like? To me, that was too much, and she was so vulnerable, and that was painful to watch. I didn't like seeing her in that light. So I think he definitely took advantage of her in that situation. But I don't remember them not being, maybe because I kept in touch with both of them. Like I was still talking because we were friends. Right. So I was still talking to them, but I don't really know how long they were gone for.
And it was more of a road suspension than it was overall because they were working technically in the office because of the flights.
Yeah, but like how long was
things.
it? Like I don't know.
That's what I was wondering.
I don't remember, but like I do know that like ECW is where Chris shined. It's where I mean, he was talented. Every run that he had, you know, pure talent. But I feel like in ECW, he was on top, where he rightfully deserved it. I've said it a million times. I think that him and Shane should have, you know, he should have turned heel or I mean, we were heels anyway, but he should have turned on Shane and had a run for the heavyweight belt. I think that we could have did so much. The four of us could have did so much with an angle like that. And we teased it for a little bit, but it never really, nothing ever happened. I just, man, I just look back and it's just both of them so talented. So talented. And to see him with that Impact TNA footage and how happy he was and how good he looked. And you know, that morning that he passed away, I was just leaving my house. I lived in Delaware. I was going to the Philly airport. I had a gig in California. I had a flight in like 2 hours or something. I was just getting ready to get in the car. My phone rang and it was Tammy, hysterical, telling me Chris had died. And I just froze. I was like, what? And she's like, he's gone. She was screaming into the phone. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I like panicking. Can I come live with you? She asked to live with me. I said, oh, Tammy, I don't know, you know, I'm getting ready to get on a plane right now. And to this day, it breaks my heart that I did not get to go to his funeral. That is a memory with me that I just can't like shake it. But you know, I would 2 hours, my flight. I had no idea. Like if it would have happened before, I could have made plans and stuff. But that always breaks my heart that I didn't get to go because I was away. You know, I was there for, I don't know how long I was there for, but I was there when the funeral happened. And that was a hard one for me because I loved Chris with all my heart. Still do. I still do. And when I pray at night, I always include Chris and Louie in my prayers. Louis Piccoli. Always.
Got a small glimpse of him as well. In
one of the clips. Yeah, so I'm walking down
as Brad Radford moshing on the way to the ring with Skip. Again, just I you know, for if you're a YouTube member, you saw our preview of Darkside of the Ring, and you know, Francine has gone on record many times saying not a big fan of the series for the negative light that it has shed on many personalities and incidents throughout the history of wrestling. I tend to agree, although I have said there are a few episodes that I do like. This one, I have to put at the top of the list. And I reached out. I said to Johnny Candido, I said, this was a wonderful put together piece. And I hope your family got what you guys wanted out of it, because I think it was well done and it was gripping and it was emotional. And I, as a fan of Chris, was happy with how it was done. So I was hoping that they were as well, and it seems like they were. So it was, you know, again, just sad. I mean, who they called? I mean, they talked to Lance, they talked to Cornette, they talked to Dr. Tom. The way they broke down, I mean, that was you couldn't not be a human being and feel that emotion coming off the screen from those guys. I mean, and then to feel it coming from you, it's the impact that he had on his compadres and his coworkers is unbelievable. His friends, that's what we'll say it.
Yeah, and like watching that, to see Cornette break down like that, because you know, I'm not really familiar with Jim Cornette, right? I know, like, I've seen his work, obviously, but like the person, Jim Cornette, and everybody talks about his podcast and how he shits on everyone. And it was touching to see him break down like that, because I've never seen that emotion from him before. So you can tell he genuinely loved Chris. And, you know, he's the one that gave them their start. And he always spoke highly of Chris.
Yes.
So that was nice to see. I was a little shocked that Shane wasn't involved with this project. I thought that he would be one of the guys that they would call to talk. But he wasn't, you know, he wasn't one of them. But the people that were selected, you know, knew him and loved him. And talked about him in positive light. You're not going to meet. I mean, I don't know if you'll ever meet anyone that talks about Chris in a negative way. You can't professionally. There's no way anybody on this planet could talk about him negatively professionally, because everything that he did was for the business. I mean, you saw that room when his brother walked through the room, and the drawings and the pictures and the belt, and God, he loved the sport so much. You know, he loved it, and it killed him. It ultimately killed him. If you think about it, that's what killed him. It was wrestling.
Yeah, very true. Johnny told me all about the room, and he said it's kept the way it was left.
Yeah,
that in their house, it is the way it was left, and that he calls it Chris's office, and it's the way it was left back then, and it's that what you can't feel the impact that he left to somebody who knew him, but you can feel the impact that he left on an industry. And when something can immortalize it like a piece like that, that'll never go away. And I hope that somebody last night watching it for the first time discovered Chris Candido and is going to go back and watch matches, watch the good stuff, not focus on the, some of these things that weren't so great in life, but look at the stuff that he did. And like Cornette said, he would still, if he was active today, if he was still wrestling, which I'm sure he would have been because he wasn't that old, he would be one of the top guys in the industry.
He would be in the sport in some capacity, whether it would be as an active wrestler or a coach. I mean, he would have been a tremendous coach or agent. He'd be somewhere, definitely. Probably AEW, if that would be my guess. He had so much knowledge and just been doing it for so long.
But let me tell you, I'll give you a little context in a minute. I don't know if you know parts of the story. By about 2002-ish, 2003, the reputation had preceded him because of the association and because of the history with him and Tammy. He was trying to get back in with WWE in the trainer role. And he was trying and basically was told, like, look, you got to prove it. You got to show us that you're good. And if you're good, we'll bring you back, because he was training guys. He was in that room when The Rock was being broken in. He was there early in 96 when he was still an active guy on their roster. When he was hurt, they basically transitioned him into helping train guys. In like 2002, 2003, he could have been brought back, but unfortunately, because of the stigma there was at the time, he wasn't. And that's a shame. And he could have been and built a huge, huge career out of that. And
his life would have been different, because he wouldn't have been wrestling in TNA and broke his leg or his ankle. It's just, man, it's funny how life works. I just, something like a doctor telling you, okay, don't get on that plane. Why did he get on the plane? Why would he risk his life for one freaking show? You know what I mean? Like, heal up. He was in his mind. He was probably like, I'm in this angle and they're going to push me and I need to be there. And God, they would have waited for him.
Oh yeah. He was main focus of that.
They would have waited.
He was great. He was helping catapult that team. They became such like a great part of that Impact show or whatever it was called at that time. And Tammy said, he could have stayed at, and Shane said it too. They could have stayed at Shane's place. They had plenty of friends in Florida, Orlando area. Just, he wanted to get home. Jesus. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, I'm sure they're rerunning it. I'm sure it's going to pop up on YouTube. I'm sure it's on demand.
YouTube now.
Oh, it is on YouTube now.
So many people put the episode up already. Yeah. The whole episode. So
Do yourself a favor, check it out.
it was just really, really hard to watch. Really, really difficult to watch for me. Um, I loved seeing him again. I loved seeing, the footage of him in the ring because he was so good. He was so good. Dare I say, hardly anyone better than Chris as an overall performer. Like, he was just so freaking good and just a waste. Just makes me so angry. Like, both of them just make me so freaking angry. It's just, and I can't imagine what his mom is feeling watching that back. Like, it's just horrible. It's a horrible thing for a mother to lose their child. It's just sad. I was dreading doing this today. Like, I, just dreading it. I knew I was going to lose it. But I loved him. I love him. And I love her. And I just that's our picture because I know that background. Just makes me angry. It's terrible. He had so much more life to live and so much more to give. And people were saying he died a long time ago from a broken heart. And that makes me upset as well. I know how much he loved Tammy. I know it. And I do think that she loved him to an extent. God, it's just such a messed up story. I was just happy that I knew him and we had a very, very strong bond and a good friendship. And I could remember us sitting around laughing, joking, it went beyond being colleagues. And he was a dear friend of mine. I miss him. I think about him every day. I miss him. And when the mother said, I wish I could have been there to help him, like, that broke my heart because there was nothing she could have did. I mean, the only thing that she could have did was comforted him and held his hand and said that she loved him, but she couldn't fix the situation.
It's heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. Again, please, if you haven't seen it, go check it out and do yourself a favor, educate yourself on Chris's career and watch a match or two and see what he left on the business because it's a very strong impact. So if there's nothing else to add, Francine, I'll wrap it up for you, and we'll catch you next time on Eyes Up Here for the Queen of Extreme. This is the Chadster. No gimmicks needed.